I remember back in high school when I started getting actively involved in the anime community, the name Masaki Yuasa was sort of an enigma to me. Being among the most highly regarded and frequently discussed directors in the forums and spaces I spent my time in, the way he was talked about made him out to be a visionary director. His intimate understanding of people profoundly effective, and his utilization of storytelling devices in the animated medium far ahead of his field. Beyond that, many expressed feeling a personal connection to the thematic and emotional undercurrents running through his directorial works. As a relatively new anime fan who thought of themselves as being a connoisseur of smart media, the dumbass that I was, the idea of Yuasa as he had been described to me was more than enough to pique my interest. So I watched one of his most critically acclaimed works, The Tatami Galaxy, based on the novel of the same name by Tomohiko Morimi, and at the time had initially felt, well, a little bit let down. I thought the artwork and designs were nice to look at and was impressed by its effective utilization of repetition as a thematic framework, but even having enjoyed it on the whole, I found myself wondering if Yuasa hadn't been built up to be a little bigger than he actually was. At the time, I was most invested in media that I felt challenged me on a strictly narrative level, and compared to much of what I was engaged with at the time, the Tatami Galaxy wasn't at all convoluted or difficult to parse through, save for the exercise and speed reading that came packaged with it. The last two episodes sort of just explained the point through rapidly delivered superfluous monologue, and while the rest of the series is enjoyable in its own right, following Watashi's repeated attempts at living the rose-colored campus life, it left me unsure of what I was intended to take away from it all. The characters were likable enough, but their personalities were so eccentric that I had difficulty pinning them to reality for the better part of the series. The humor didn't really click with me. Yuasa's directorial style was inventive and unique, but didn't keep the episodes from feeling uneventful, and the overarching narrative structure, while clever, didn't offer me the kind of engagement I was looking to get out of it. While I thought the series was fun and remained interested in seeing more of what his directorial catalog had to offer, all of the quirks and nuances that made him unique fell on deaf ears. It wasn't that I was incapable of understanding what made him unique and interesting, that much was self-evident. It's just that I didn't get it, at least not until much later. Looking back, my initial reaction to the Tatami Galaxy was broadly indicative of my younger self's approach to media, including all of the glaring flaws and oversights that I would eventually grow out of as I continued developing a passion for it. However, even before I had fully learned to appreciate the series, after watching the final episode, I couldn't deny that some part of it had resonated with me in a way that I wasn't anticipating, and certainly couldn't explain. When the series hits its climactic peak, Watashi reaching for his future, unsure of what it holds, but confident in meeting it head-on, it struck a chord with me, the reverberations of which I was incapable of ignoring. After spending 9 episodes reliving his college years over and over in search of the rose-colored campus life he had idealized, failing to grasp it no matter which angle he approached it from, Watashi gives up entirely and isolates himself in his room, shortly thereafter finding himself trapped in it. As he explores his own multiverse, every door, window, wall, and ceiling leading to a slightly altered version of his room, each representing alternate realities where he had made different sets of choices, he discovers that while none of the roads lead to his idealized reality, all of those versions of himself were happy and content in a way that he had never been. After exhausting his efforts to accept his condition as a prisoner of fate, he reflects on how, in pursuit of that ideal, he had taken advantage of the people around him, neglected to take open opportunities, and in doing so had lost sight of what he wanted out of life and the small things that had made it interesting. Getting dragged into Ozu's antics, interacting with the eccentric personalities on campus, eating at Neko Ramen, the opportunity to connect with Akashi. He became so obsessed with the possibility that he was missing out on some better life that he failed to see what was right in front of him. Having made this realization, he decides that he's ready to leave his regrets behind and learn to love the simple act of being alive, along with all of the weird, crazy shit that comes with it. When he emerges from his 4.5 Tatami universe, he approaches the world with a newfound perspective, viewing people not as hindrances to his idealized life, but as self-contained galaxies of possibilities. As he races for the future with his eyes wide, heart set, shedding his clothes from his body, the soundtrack reaching a visceral peak as he makes an impossible leap of faith to embrace life wholesale and without hesitation. Watashi is reborn as someone capable of love. Regardless of what I thought of the Tatami Galaxy back then, whatever Yuasa had been trying to convey reached me. Without fully realizing it, what I saw in Watashi was a future in which I could also be content to live one chance at a time, exchanging doubt and self-imposed expectations for that simple, profound love for life that the show so ardently exemplifies, which was as relevant to me during that period of my life as it had ever been. Finding myself in my last year of high school, dissatisfied with my creative output and apprehensive towards the prospect of pursuing an artistic career like I'd initially planned, I channeled my struggles with depression and self-worth into my education and began seeking out career paths that I thought would give me the purpose and direction I was lacking. Like Watashi, I was seeking after an idealized reality, believing that if I could just attain a specific set of prerequisites, I would be capable of enjoying life without regret. While I had thought that going into a well-respected and confident field would be a way for me to finally be valuable to others, I was too emotionally immature to realize that it was only a desperate attempt to idealize a future for myself by which I could regain just a fraction of my self-worth, confidence, and identity. However, even with those plans being what they were, nothing really changed. I wasn't any happier, I certainly wasn't any more confident, and for all of my rationalizing, I couldn't be completely convinced that I wasn't making a mistake. Every day, I drew closer to constructing my own Tatami galaxy, an all-consuming labyrinth of possibilities and hypotheticals that would eventually trap me inside it, all the while continuing to ask myself, what if? The Tatami galaxy envisions the world as being exciting, bizarre, and enthralling all on its own, positing that while it may be full of hardships and the people existing within it deeply flawed, there's still value to be found. As time went on and my mind continued to drift back to it, I slowly came to love everything about the Tatami galaxy, partially from a technical standpoint, having finally recognized Tomohiko Morimi's effective storytelling techniques and Yuasa's intricately detailed visual presentation, but also from a thematic standpoint, its overarching narrative structure being entirely established upon its understanding that life is weird, unpredictable, and not easily bent to our liking, but also that it should be embraced in its entirety regardless, because hidden within are the ordinary things that make our experiences unique and worthwhile. I started this YouTube channel a few months into my final semester. The Tatami galaxy's still fresh in my mind. Even though I never really got the hang of a regular upload schedule, its existence holds personal significance for me, a signifier of my newfound decision to take chances without being held back by fear of failure or regret. I decided against starting college immediately after graduating, opting to take some time off for self-study until I was confident I could pursue my passions without any self-imposed obligations. Truth be told, I was tired of chasing the life that I had idealized for myself. I was tired of holding myself to standards I'd never be able to live up to. I didn't want to live being constantly afraid of regret. I wanted to love being alive. And that was all I really needed. That's not to say that I no longer share in the struggles of my younger self, but I'm not bound by them. I don't credit the Tatami galaxy alone with this shift in perspective. There were any number of factors informing it, but at the time it had been exactly the story I needed, and it continues to be resonant and life-affirming to this day. I had initially set out to discover why Yuasa was such a critically acclaimed and beloved director, and while I can't speak for everyone who enjoys his work, I did find my own answer. Just from his catalog of directorial works, Yuasa strikes me as a person who legitimately loves to be alive. That passion overflowing into everything he does. And if the Tatami galaxy convinced me of anything, it's that I wanted to live like that.